Peace and shalom, family. Peace and shalom. What's going on? It's going to give it a minute or two for y'all to come and join in. Let me throw something up on the screen real quick as we wait. All right, it's going to give it a second. Give you another moment to join in. All right, shalom, shalom. What's going on, family? Shalom, shalom. All right, man. Thank you all for joining us here for another session that we're doing today, special session that we're doing today. There's a lot of stuff going on in the community and things that's going on. I'm not going to discuss that on this particular session. I'll focus on that tomorrow when we do our Freestyle Friday. We can talk about various things. This video in particular, I want to hone in on Sukkot. Now, for those of you who are following the KHM pre-exilic Israelite menological or sacerdotal menological model, which means priestly reckoning of months, model or calendar, whatever the case may be, however you want to call it. We are on our final evening of Sukkot, which is tonight, which is Thursday night. And it should be completed by tomorrow by sunset. And in the evenings, if you construct booths and live in booths. Some people do not have the luxury of creating booths themselves. So they reside in tents and they sleep in tents. And they even have meals and eating in tents or even outdoor near the tents. All right. So on the first day, as we're going to read, is when you have your day of rest. Now, why do you have a day of rest when the Sukkot comes in? And I'm going to discuss that in a second. All right. But let me give a couple of shout outs, man. Make sure you share this video. I'm going to give a lot of great insight in regards to the text, history, and culture, and a couple of things I think that we should know. You know how much we stress about understanding the culture that's underlined in the text. So that way you get a holistic worldview or eagle's eye of the culture. So that way you can properly engage it and you can apply it contemporaneously. So we want to pull out some things, some little insights here and there, just to kind of equip you guys to better understand what's going on. Okay. All right. So let me give a couple of shout outs. Shout out to Essie Thompson and the Bill and Lillian Rudd. What's going on? Jetson Silencio, Consuelo F, Dimitri Elda, Al Not M. Kyles, Donnie Yash Shamgar, Joshua Armstrong, Shema, Scott Garrett Headley, Joe Nuff, Mr. Blacktastic, Sean Island, Keep It a Buck, Jimmy Johnson, Yehuda Dawid, Jamel Jones, New Hope Family Investments. What's going on? Brother Seth M, Bruce Williams, Terrence Jones, Brother James, aka Get Wise, DB, Hebrew Exalted by Yah, Fall, Liz, and Wonderland. What's going on? JJ. So JJ, man, what's up with that, bro? We'll talk off camera, man. It's a lot going on. Unfortunately, didn't have time to do that, but it didn't blow off. I didn't blow it off. Trust me, it's still on track. I still intend to do it. Okay. And remember, you also changed the date as well yourself, and I agreed to it. And I told you I wanted to commence with Sukkot first before engaging in that. Right. So that took precedence over me having a debate. Okay. So I just want to make sure you completely understand that, my brother, because this is still Sukkot. This is set apart time, and my focus is on that. Okay. That family and time with the Most High. So that overrides a debate to me. However, like I said, it's not off. I mean, you're going to get what you're asking for. Okay. So we're still going to deal with that. All right, my brother. So reach out to me next week, because our Sukkot ends tomorrow during the day, which is Friday at sunset. So the following day is the Sabbath. And then we have Sunday, Monday. So reach out to me Sunday and Monday. Let's just schedule a date and time for next week and let's get it in. Nobody's running. It's not that serious, right? But you, like I said, you're going to get what you're asking for, my brother. All right. So I apologize for any delays, but I will get to you soon. And again, once you are rushing for this butt whooping, I mean, I'm just going to provide it, my brother, right? It's an opportunity for you to learn. I'm definitely looking forward to your perspective to see what angle you're coming at. But for the most part, I'm familiar with it. So it is what it is. All right. So let's get past that. All right. So right now, what I have on the screen is our KHM pre-exilic Israelite sacerdotal menological model, or KHM pre-exilic calendar. Right. As you can see, as the trumpeter. So we know that they're the ones who usher in Ethanim by way of the full moon. And we reckon the full moon through 7 cycles of, or 7 phases of the full moon up until this point for the 7th month, which is Ethanim. Right. Starting with Aviv, and we got Ethanim. All right. I'm gonna go into a little bit in regards to some of that reckoning. I'm not gonna go too deep in it because I've done videos on it before, but this one I want to give you some insights in regards to Sukkot. Right, there's a lot of cultural things that I think that is necessary for us to understand, so we can see what was going on within its historical context. All right, so let me go ahead and scroll down the calendar now. Those of you who had this calendar, great. You know, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I know some of y'all had asked me questions about it because y'all was following it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it on the screen here so you guys can see it, so you can kind of assess to see what's going on. As you see here, we're on day 15, okay? Excuse me, not day 15, day 22, I'm bugging. Day 22, the evening, which would be tonight, Thursday night. And then you have your day portion, and your day portion would be your feast of Ingathering, which is done during the day right before sunset. All right, that's important. We're going to touch on a little bit about that. All right, so this is so you guys are aware of what's going on. Okay, during the feast of Ingathering, there should be no occupational work being performed. Just like a week ago, there should be no occupational work being performed during the day. Now, why is there no occupational work that's being done? Okay, so if you go to, as you can see on the calendar, you see day 15, right? So what you see here, that right here that we have in the blue is the overlay of the KHM pre-exilic Israelite calendar. And then as you can see here at the bottom, this is the Gregorian calendar correlative, right? So the reason why is because that evening when the feast comes in, okay, there is a lot of, back in those times, people spent time at night around campfires, eating and drinking and celebrating, etc. Right? So what happens is if you're drinking a lot of wine and you're eating a lot of food, the next day, you know, because for the ancient Israelites in pre-exilic times, their business day or their occupational day begins at sunrise and ends at sunset. Okay, just like in modern day America, ours is from 9 to 5. That's considered a business day, right? So being that you're going to be full of food and you're going to be full of wine, there's no way nobody's going to be working the next day. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, the Most High understood this, you know what I'm saying, and allowed for them to have that day of occupational labor off, so they didn't have to work because they would be feasting the night prior. The same goes for today, you know, in the evening, which ushers in the final day of Sukkot. Then tomorrow during the day, again, is an occupational day of rest. And the reasoning for that during that period of time was, number one, because the feasting, right? But number two, more importantly, is that they were set aside to bring in all of the crops, the final crops, bring them all into the storehouse, right? Take everything off of the wine press, take everything off of the threshing floor, anything that may need to be scavenged outdoors, bring them all into the storehouse. And you want to do this before the torrential rains hit, for the wintry rains start to hit and start to destroy these items as they're out there in the field, because when these rains come, this was the time for the agriculturalists to begin to sow seed into the earth. Okay, so this is the practical understanding of why, you know, a lot of times you have these feast days where there's no day that you're working that next day, because that evening when you're feasting at night, during the day, you're going to be too full of food and wine to work. Okay, so typically what they would do is after that hangover and everything is done, you know, during the Feast of Ingathering, then they would go out and they would collect all the last crops right before sunset and make sure everything was taken in the storehouse. So that way, in anticipation of the wintry rains that was about to come, they would be all set. All right. So I want to give you guys a little insight in regards to that, so you can understand the practical nature of the culture, right? It's practice, very practical. All right. And these are things that people just don't teach. All right. So I just want to make sure that you guys understand this, because this is extremely important in regards to reorienting yourself back to the culture. But the only way you can apply what you learn is if you understand it within this historical and cultural and linguistic context. Okay. All right. So with that being said, let me transition just so you guys know, on our Patreon. We've added some new content on our Patreon. I'm going to go ahead and show it to you guys real quick so you guys can see. All right. All right, so you guys can pledge on our Patreon. Is www.patreon.com/DivineProspect. All right, so let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit. So it might be small on the screen. All right. So let me go ahead and scroll down, show you guys some of the things that we just added. Okay. So we just added a Biblical Hebrew Essentials for Layman's course, right? So if you pledge $20 a month, you'll have access to this. Anybody that pledged 20 or more, you'll have access to this. And if you're watching this and you want to pledge, you can do so and get access to a Biblical Hebrew Essentials for Layman course. Pretty much what this does is that it's pretty much going to give you all the essentials you need, so that way you can utilize all of the tools such as interlinears, lexicons, commentaries, etc., in order to get insight into what's going on, right? How things are being translated, what is the semantic range of words in regards to the lexicons. When commentaries make certain blurbs about this and that, you'll get insight into it, right? So this is just gives you or equips you with the essentials, the linguistic essentials, so you can follow along with dialogue discussions and use these tools, because we have our Catechism holistic research paradigm for Bible study classes that's coming soon. And if you guys jump on this will preempt you before you engage in those actual classes, right? Because these are some of the tools that we will encourage people to acquire, so that way we can get deep into these studies, all right? At least from the linguistic perspective, okay? So we have it here for Biblical Hebrew, and we also have it here for Biblical Greek. So again, this is for people who maybe don't have the discipline, the time, the energy, or whatever the case may be, to devote themselves to learning all the mechanics, the technicalities, and nuances of the language. They just want to know just enough of the language so that they can follow along with discussions in regards to the language, right? Because a lot of times I touch on the grammar, the syntax, I touch on the lexical value of words, semantic range of words, and stuff like that. And I find nuances within the text, and you'll be able to discover these things with these minimal essentials, right? So this is what this is designed to do, is written for laymen. So it's not written like a standard academic course. It's written more for like a layman, right? And I learned about these tools last year, right? Because I was using something totally different years ago when I started learning the language, and I wish I had started off with these tools, right? But unfortunately I didn't. I went the mechanical, technical way, you know what I'm saying, to learn the language. But after I've perused through what these tools can provide for somebody who's a layman, who just want to know just enough to get through the tools and follow discussions and dialogues, these are excellent sources, and we're providing you access to it to stream, you know what I'm saying? So if you pledge 20 or more, you get access to the Biblical Hebrew Essentials and the Biblical Greek Essentials, okay? So also what I posted was some books on regards to the Sabbath. The one is called Jesus and the Sabbath in Matthew's Gospel. The other one is called From Sabbath to the Lord's Day. And the other one is from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, 2nd edition. So those of you who've been following the saga that's been going on in regards to the urban apologist community and the Hebrew Israelite community, and a lot of things has been cropping up lately. There's a discussion on the Sabbath because a particular person that was part of the urban apologist community, people just now finding out that they are associated with the SDA, which is the Seventh-day Adventist group, and they made a video in regards to the Sabbath, and they were excommunicated from the urban apologist community, right? I'm not going to go into details about that in this video, but you can anticipate that discussion to show up for tomorrow, when we'll dive deeper into that. But these resources are up there for those who want to look into the Catechism of the Catholic Church, right? This is like the laws and bylaws of the Catholic Church by ways of question and answer, right? There's also a Protestant one that I'll talk about tomorrow and bring out for y'all. A lot of people don't even know that exists, but I'm going to touch on that and share this because this is information that we need to be aware of when we have dialogues with various people in different denominations, so that way we can kind of show them that we have some demonstrable knowledge in regards to the subject matter, okay? Also, I threw a behind the scenes video clip of the KHM DMV chapter launch event. I also do up another video, the full video of me at Black Lives Matter Plaza in downtown Washington, D.C., which is an excellent video. Go check it out. There's portions of both of these that's in the KHM DMV chapter launch event recap trailer, which you guys can view on YouTube. However, if you want to see those clips in more depth, if you pledge to the Patreon, you'll be able to get access to it. Okay. We also have this book called The Black Panther Party, Service to the People's Programs, which is excellent. I researched this. I learned this years ago. And I had came up for ideas for our ministry organization. And some of them actually mirrored what was being done by the Black Panther Party, right? Not everything. There are some differences, but there are some things that are similar because these are essential things that the community needs. And if we are trying to look out for the poor, the oppressed, the willerless, the fatherless, etc., then these are things that we have to provide as services and programs to the community. All right. I'm also posted up a book called A Greek English Lexicon of the Septuagint. Excellent book for those of you who are diving into the Septuagint. And for those of you who go through those biblical Greek essentials course, you'll be able to know how to use something like a Greek English Lexicon of the Septuagint, which is extremely valuable. And I tell you guys about the one that I use online, which is katsabiblon.com. That's the one that I use when I get into the All right, I'm back. I don't know what just happened. I have no clue what just happened. Somebody tell me what point we stopped off at. So now we're talking about the Patreon. Let me get back to the Patreon real quick before we get into this. Somebody just let me know at what point did we drop off. So pretty much what I was saying, this was the last thing I was going into, the hard sayings of the Bible. I'm not sure if you guys caught that part, but in regards to the hard sayings of the Bible, what I was referencing was that this is an apologetic book that's written to address a lot of the passages in the text that are complex, difficult, unsettling, unnerving, and that is just downright like, what? You know what I'm saying? So this is an apologetic book that was created to address those concerns. And again, this is one of the many benefits and perks of the Patreon, and those who are in the chat that have already are partaking of the Patreon members can attest to all of the resources that is available on the Patreon. So when you invest in the ministry and our ministry to keep this thing going as part of the Patreon, you get tons of resources in exchange for your investment into the ministry. All right. So some of y'all saying I left off with the Septuagint. So pretty much I was saying is that if you go and use the Biblical Greek Essentials course that we have available for free access to stream on our Patreon, then a resource like this, a Greek English Lexicon of the Septuagint, would be invaluable to you. You know how to use it, and you'll be able to understand some of the grammar, semantic range, lexical values, etc. So you can follow along with discussions and discourses that you may find on YouTube, that you may have on social media, or that you may come across in academic articles. All right. So again, these are the things that we're giving back to the community for all that you have done for us. And hopefully you guys enjoy it. All right. So I'm done with that portion. Please let me know. Hit 1 if the audio and video is on point. Hit 1 if the audio and video is on point. I need to know that everything is working accurately before we proceed. I don't want anything to lock up, to freeze up, to look crazy anymore. So please hit 1. Please hit 1. Let me know that everything is working well so we can definitely get started. All right. So hit 1. Hit 1 and let me know that everything is good. All right. So shout out to Yvette Powell in the building. What's going on? Rufus Kemp. What's going on? Jonathan SOT. Shalom, shalom. Yarden Yehuda Ben Israel. What's up? What's up? Goddess Isis. Shalom. Abbott Cole. What's going on? Coach Vaughn Parker. What's up? What's up? Stephen. Mikhail Key. One Love is in the building. Emmanuel Curry. Let me see. Did I get everybody? I think I got everybody. Chagrit Brown. What's going on? Tia Thompson. Mona Breakley. Sadek Ben Yisrael. Thomas Jackson. Imani Ife in the building. Brian Samuels. Walter Arthur Jr. What's going on? What's going on? All right. I think I got y'all. Foolish World 75. Vinny D. Davis. Jetson Silencio. The Dove 617. Let's get it. All right. Jimmy Johnson. What's up? What's up? Austin, Texas in the building. Consuelo F. Shalom, sis. Howard, Seraphine. What's going on? Thank you so much for your donation and your patronage of the ministry. I appreciate it, as well as everybody else in there. I have some notable shout outs that I'm going to give tomorrow when we go live. But I thank everybody for keeping us afloat, man. So we have 100+ people in the building. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button, hit that thumbs up button, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you share this video everywhere. If you're brand new, hit the subscribe button. And when you hit that subscribe button, you'll be able to check out all the archive videos that we have on this channel. We have tons of content that I know you will love and enjoy. And this is just a preview of that. All right. All right. So let's get started. All right. So the reason why we're doing this is because, like I said, we are encroaching upon the last day of Sukkot, right? So that begins in this evening. All right, I'm back. I don't know what's going on, man. You see, man, Christian magic, man. Christian magic. You got to stay away from that. Yo, hit one if I'm back. Hit one if I'm back so I can get started. Let me get this out the way before this thing freezes up again. Man, just interrupting the flow of everything, man. Hopefully everything is fine now. Been having some internet issues the past couple of days by means of the modem supplied to me from Comcast. When I had Google Fiber, I never had none of these issues, man. But nonetheless, I got to work with what I have based on where I live. So I might swap out, their supplied modem for a modem of my own that's provisioned on their network, so I don't have these issues. All right. So anyway, that's a little IT stuff. Never mind it. But if we back hit one, all right. Looks like we back. All right. So like I was saying, the reason why I'm doing this particular session is because I wanted to address it before we did our Freestyle Friday. I want to give a lesson in regards to Sukkot before Sukkot commences and is completed. All right. Those of you who still want to follow what's going on, you guys can still acquire the KHM Pre-Exilic Israelite calendar that we still have available. If you're interested in it, email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. Anybody that is interested in contacting the ministry, please give us a call. I'm gonna put the number at the bottom. Anybody that is interested. All right, let me go ahead and drop that information for y'all. All right. Okay, so the contact information is there. The support information is there. If you guys want to donate to the ministry, you can do so via Super Chat, Cash App, or Patreon. All right. Also, if you want to contact our ministry, the number is there, 678-430-3832. Our hours of operations from 9 to 6, so 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Sometimes it may stretch out to 7 p.m., but those are our hours of operation. When you give a call in, you're going to be hitting the KHM answering service where somebody will take your call, capture your details of what your inquiry is, and make sure that it's scheduled for you to get a call back or follow up. OK, also, if you guys have any requests or anything like that, email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. This Wednesday, we are scheduling a Natural Path to Eden onboarding session. Right. For those of you who are interested in becoming affiliates, those of you interested in getting the service, and those of you who may be interested in regards to being a consultant, we're doing a primer this upcoming Wednesday, or next Wednesday. We're doing a primer at 5 p.m. So if you guys are interested in that, please contact us via the email. So I mean the app, right? So if you can see there on the screen, you see it says Apple app, Google Play Store. We have an app that we're using. It's called My One Church app. The My One Church app. Oh, I gotta edit that. That's crazy right there. All right. It's the My One Church app. And what you guys can do. Here we go. What you guys can do is please go to your Apple App Store. Please go to your Google Play Store. You're going to type in My One Church app. Click the get or click the download or install button. And then once you hit that, open up the app. You're going to have a field for zip code. Type 30064, 30064. You're going to see the Kingdom Harbinger Ministries entry pop up. Please click onto that. Then you're going to be presented with the app. All right. You'll see where it says groups. Click on the groups. And if you want to sign up for any one of our groups, please do so there. If you're interested in this Natural Path to Eden, the consultant program, the affiliate program, or our services, you'll see those groups that'll be there within the group section. Click on one of those groups. Click on the blue circle button to add your information. We'll lock you in so that way we can do a push notification and remind you guys when that session is started. If you want to join, partner with the ministry in any way, shape, or form, once you open the app, at the top left, you'll see 3 horizontal bars. Click on that for the drop-down menu. Click on the forms option, and then click on the membership details entry there, and then click on the blue add button and put your details in, right? So I'll be throwing up a video on this soon, so you guys can watch the video. And as in the video, I'll walk you through on how to do these things, as well as some social media posts. I'll do that. We're trying to get everybody who's interested in the ministry, as far as joining us, partnering with us, working with us, joining our our programs, our employment programs, being part of our services, or whatever. Want to volunteer, whatever the case may be, please do so through the app. Okay, you can still email us, but we want to capture all details through the app. Also, just so you guys know, we will be we're planning to be in Los Angeles November 13th, right? So November 13th, we're planning to be in Los Angeles, and then we're going to try to hit either Houston or Raleigh before the end of November. All right, so I got to see where Raleigh is at, where Houston is at, where we have the most requests for us to come is where we're going to touch down. Maybe try to squeeze both of them in. I'm not sure. We got to see. But November 14th, 13th, 14th, and 15th is definitive for LA. We will be in LA on the 13th, 14th, and 15th. All right. All right. So the flyer for that will be coming out soon. Like I told you guys, until the flyer is there, it is not official. However, I'm telling you, we already penciled it in. So that is the goal. All right. All right. So now that we got all that out the way, let's get into our lesson. All right. So I want to start off with some scriptures, and I'm going to read the scriptures. I'll give a little insight, and then we're going to jump into some resources. And I'm going to show you something that I'm not going to say it's mind-blowing. It may be for some, but I'm going to show you some overlooked insights. Now, this is why the scholarship portion of KHM is necessary, because our objective is to reconstruct and restore the culture, right, that a lot of us have lost, that we're missing, that we're unaware of, and bring these things to your attention, and then not only give you the methodology of how we discern these things, but also give you the resources so you can do it for yourself. All right, we want to do these things. We want to equip the community to achieve cultural autonomy, right, over what they identify with, right. And unfortunately, today we don't have anything like that. So what we want to do is provide a way for that to be accomplished. Okay, so hopefully you guys appreciate it and enjoy it. And we thank you guys for your support. All right. So shout out to Seth Brass. He said, I'm definitely interested in your calendar. Is it formulated by the new moon? The new moon is one of 6 points of reckoning time in order for us to ascertain when to start the Moedim, or the feast. All right. So feast days or gathering days. Feast is Hag in Hebrew. Hagim is the feast. Moedim is the gathering around the annual feast, right? That are seasonal. All right. So again, we have a whole playlist in regards to that. So anybody here that is familiar with that playlist, you can go right into the Kingdom Harbinger Ministries YouTube channel, look for the playlist on the calendar, throw it in here in the chat as a point of reference for people to follow. And I'll also put it in the description after the video's over. Okay. All right, so let's get going. Let's get going. Again, hit that thumbs up button. Hit that thumbs up button. Let's get started. We're going to start first with Shemot, Exodus chapter 23 and 16. Let's get through our readings. I'm going to point some nuances out. I'm going to go into some references, and I'm going to show you stuff into the culture. All right, and I'm sure that as far as I can tell, this hasn't been shared anywhere in the Israelite community. And I want to expose you guys to this because, again, I'm going to show you a couple things, right? In order for you to properly reconstruct and restore the culture, you need 3 witnesses, right? You need several resources or approaches, but 3 witnesses. What are the 3 witnesses? You need the non-material culture, which is the text. You need the material culture, which was left behind by the people in regards to archaeology. And you need a living culture that has elements of the text and the non-material material culture that they're still employing today. And with these 3 witnesses, you can properly reconstruct and restore the culture. However, there are different approaches to take in analyzing these 3 witnesses, right? The linguistic approach, the approach that deals with history, the approach that deals with culture or the customs of the day. You have to look at the geographical location. You got to look at the climate in the region, the diet. Look for ethnic markers such as apparel, the way they dress, cultic items that was left behind, things of that nature. You have to do an analysis of all these various things when you're applying it to these 3 witnesses so you can get a holistic perspective. Now, when we do our classes, we're going to give you guys all those resources so that way, as we're getting into the culture. See, that's the problem. People think we're religious. We're not religious. Religious people most of the time just stick to the text and build off their own, conclusions based on presuppositional knowledge or things that they've grabbed here and there. They don't really have a methodology of making everything cohesive, harmonizing everything, right? Into something that is coherent, that could be coherently presented. And that is what we want to give to the community. Because in order for us to have a more close-knit community and to achieve autonomy, your cultural foundation has to be solid. Okay. So we want to be able to give the tools in order for us to derive those things objectively. Okay. As objective as possible. Okay. All right. So my brother Shema, no, I did not see your comment, my brother. Please reach out to me offline and I can chat with you. I'm not going to be looking that much at the chat until the end of what I'm about to share. Okay. It's already been 30 minutes. Let me go ahead and get into the material if y'all don't mind. Hold off on the questions to me. However, you can interact in the chat, leave your comments, talk to you amongst each other. But as soon as I'm finished, then I'll go ahead and do a quick Q&A or look in the chat to see what y'all saying. Okay, is that good? Give me the thumbs up emoji if that's good. All right, let's get into this information. Like I said, a lot of these sources that I'm about to present is already available on a Patreon. If you're not part of the Patreon and you want to acquire these resources, please email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com, and then we will service you in the order in which your request was received. All right, but please hit the thumbs up button if you're ready to get into us. Let's get to Shemot chapter 23, verse 16, or Exodus chapter 23 and 16, and let's get it popping. Again, hit that thumbs up button. Hit that thumbs up button. Shout out to my brother Gathering of Israelite Nation, Netherlands in the building. What's going on? Up next, shalom. All right, Deborah Newsom, what's going on? All right, so thumbs up. All right, so I got the green light. All right, family, so let's get it popping, man. All right, so Exodus chapter 23 and 16. Let's get into this information, man. Let me bring it up on the screen so that those of you can follow along with what we're saying, what we're talking about, what the discussion is going on. All right, here we go. Okay, we're right here on blueletterbible.org. All right, let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit more. All right, there we go. All right. So we're going to start at Exodus chapter 23, verse 16. All right. All right. Now I'm going to show you something very, very peculiar, right? Again, language is important, but I want you to see the development of the culture, right? From things starting as a familial cult into a national, what we call Kodesh Hag, set apart feast. All right. But I'm going to show you some things, some clues. Okay. Check this out. All right. Exodus 23 and 16 says, you shall keep the feast of harvest of the first fruits of your labor, of what you sow in the field. You should keep the feast of ingathering at the end of the year. Okay. When you gather in from the field, the fruit of your labor. Okay. Now here it says in verse 17, watch this, 3 times in a year shall all your males appear before Lord God, it says. Or here, you know, if we go into the Hebrew, we can take a look to see what it's linking us down in the Hebrew, where it says Adon Yehovah, right? If we go back up to the Hebrew, we see here, it says Ha Adon Yehovah, right? Ha, this is your infinitive article, meaning the. Adon, which means a master over something. You have your Aleph, your Chamet, your Dalet, your Cholam, and your final Nun, your Ha-Adon, and then your Yehawa, Yehawa. You have your Yod, your Shewa, you have your Hey, your Wav, your Chamet, and your Hey, all right? So the reason why this is important, right? And again, you have here your word El, Panai, which means to face, or to appear. That's what we say prepare. It's really face to face, right? To face the Most High. Your word Panay here is your word for face, right? Or even the edge of the face, right? So the important thing to note here, it says that all your males shall appear before Ha-Adon Yahweh, right? Or Yahu, Yahweh, wherever you want to call it, right? The reason why I'm saying this is important because what we see here, it doesn't say the place. See, you don't have the chug, which means circle. Actually, a chagim can come from the word chug, meaning circle. You don't have your pilgrimage feast embedded here. Shemot is very important because this represents a lot of the familial cult that then later becomes nationalized. Keep this in mind. That's a very peculiar theme to keep in mind as we progress. But as it says here, it calls what we say is Sukkot. It calls it the Feast of Ingathering. We don't see that word Sukkot here in Exodus. That's very, very important. Let's get into this then. Let's check it out. See what word we have here, right? So we have here a Feast of Ingathering, right? You have your Aleph, Chamet, you have your Sin, you have your Hirik, you have your Yod, and you have your final Peh, right? Your Asif. That's your ingathering, word Chag, your Feast of Ingathering. Now, why is this important? Okay, why is this important? Well, it's important because there's a reason why it doesn't say Sukkot. Why doesn't it say Sukkot? Now, you know about this Pascal meal, you know, that you see the Jews do today in the house. And a lot of times they supplement the meat for something like eggs or some other kind of protein or whatever the case may be. It's interesting because what some scholars say is that that part of tradition that we see these Jews do supposedly is maintained from pre-exilic times, because in Shemot we see that this was a familial cult or something that was done amongst families, tribes, clans, okay? Very important, households, all right? And then later on, it becomes a national thing. And I'm going to show you a little bits and pieces of this as we reconstruct it so you can understand what I'm talking about, right? So that's Exodus 23 and 16. Let's go to Exodus 34 and 22, okay? Exodus 34 and 22. All right? And it says here, you shall observe the Feast of Weeks, the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering at the year's end. Again, the Feast of Ingathering. We don't see Sukkot here. That's important. Exodus 34 and 23 says, the 3 times in the year shall all your males appear before, it says, Lord God, the God of Israel, right? So we break that down, Lord God, the God of Israel. We have Ha'adon, Yehovah, Elohei, Yisrael, right? Ha'adon, Yahweh, Elohei, Yisrael, all right? So the reason why I'm showing this, again, we do not see anything about the place that he places his name. That's not here. And that's for a reason, because these were some of the earliest texts before we get into our Leviticus and before we get into our Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is even believed to be a post-exilic text. And a lot of these texts were redacted in exile. But we do still have a lot of the original essences of it that wasn't touched, and then parts of it that we can tell was redacted, right? But again, you see here, it talks about the Feast of Ingathering, and we see it says, your male shall appear before the Most High, but it says nothing about the place. The reason why is because it was believed that all the males of the household will join at one person's house within the family, right? Or somewhere in the vicinity of where that house is at, and they would gather locally. You don't see the word Jerusalem in here anywhere. The place where I put my name, none of that is here. Okay. Again, this is purely pre-exilic, and I'm going to show you several references that validate what it is that I'm saying to you guys. This is important. All right. So let's get further into this. Let's get to Vayikra or Leviticus chapter 23, verses 33. All right. Let me stop this. Let's get into that. Again, take note of this because, again, these are the nuances that when I research, I mainly look for nuances. Why is this there? Why is that there? Why? Some people just read it. Okay, we're just going to do a Torah read and just read right through it. I'm like, whoa, hold on. There's tons of information being conveyed there. Or sometimes it is a waypoint to point you to where to get additional information. When we go through our studies, we'll get into this. So what you're getting now is a taste of what we're going to do when we get into our studies, because we're going to pick a subject matter or a passage, and we're going to use a whole bunch of tools in order to properly exegete or perform midrash on that particular passage. All right. All right. So family, hit the thumbs up. If you in here, hit the thumbs up. Please share this video. Like I said, this video is extremely important because a lot of this information people in our community are unaware of, and I want to bring it to the forefront so I can equip everybody here with all the information necessary for you to know what is going on when you read the text. All right. So let's get to Vayikra chapter 23, verses 33 to 44. It's a little lengthy, but bear with me. Let's read through it. All right. And again, the key thing is look for anything that stands out. Look for any nuances that stand out. Okay. Now we see here it says what? The Feast of Booths. And what it does is that it gives you some correlating scriptures, Numbers 29, 12 to 40, Deuteronomy 16, 13 to 17. Now we're going to get into Deuteronomy 16, 13 to 17. I wanted to read this in Vayikra first, and then we're going to touch on Numbers chapter 12 to 40 because we're going to see pretty much what that is. But check this out, right? Follow me. It says, and Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the people of Israel, saying, on the 15th day of this 7th month, and for 7 days is the feast of what? Booths. Now, whenever you use a critical edition Bible, in this case, we're using the ESV translation, okay? We see a footnote. That's what FN stands for. When you hover over the footnote, it gives you something that either gives you a reference to another scripture, it gives you a textual variant. It'll say, hey, this is not in the oldest manuscripts or something along those lines. It gives you additional information to the passage, which is invaluable. And I recommend everybody take a look at that. Okay. So it says Feast of Booths. Now, this is a totally different word. How do we know? Well, you got to do your word study. Go in and take a look at it. So we go into it and we see our word booth here is what? Sukkah. Sukkah, right? So Sukkah is what is here. And we're going to go and look for the word here, which is here. Ha Sukkot. Ha Sukkot. Let me highlight it. Ha Sukkot. All right. Now that's important because that word is not there in Shemot or Exodus. Now I'm going to show you some things as soon as we're finished with this in regards to the text, and then we're going to transition and move on to some references and cultural things, etc. Right? But please look at these nuances. Keep this in mind. I've never heard anybody pull these things out to me before, and all the congregations I've been to and stuff like that. This is important. Okay. It says on the first day shall be a holy convocation. You should not do any ordinary work. No occupation work is done. It's a set apart period of time, right? And I explain to you the practical means of why you don't work during the day portion of that first day, okay? For 7 days you shall present food offerings to Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. On the 8th day you shall hold a holy convocation and present a food offering to Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. It is a solemn assembly. You shall do no ordinary work, okay? But here we see food offerings to Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, right? These are the appointed feasts of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, which you shall proclaim as times of holy convocation for presenting Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh food offerings, burnt offerings, and grain offerings, and sacrifices and drink offerings, each on its proper day, besides Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh Sabbaths, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vow offerings, and besides all your freewill offerings, which you give to Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. Right? So you're doing it in conjunction. All right. Now, let me point something out. Now we see something, additional information coming from what? Vayikra, or the priest. So now it starts as a familial cult. And then now as the priests start to be established, now we get further regulations, which is now you present food offerings, burnt offerings, grain offerings, sacrifices, and drink offerings, each on its proper day, besides Yod-Heh-Wav Sabbaths, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vow offerings, and besides all your free will offerings. What's a free will offering? The only time we really see free will there in the Tanakh, it just means you're giving more than what is required. You're giving above what is required. So if I'm required to give, let's say, 2 burnt offerings, 4 grain offerings, and I give 5 burnt offerings and 10 grain offerings, those are free will offerings. All right. So typically people who had more had surplus and they were able to give a free will offering, because a lot of these offerings went to the priests, and then sometimes the offerings went to other people who had needs. It was a means of you taking a portion of what you've earned, giving it back to Yah for the service of his people, right? And of the priesthood, etc. Right? So a lot of times people say today, oh, we can't do this no more because there's no priest here, so we can't do these offerings. And I said, wait, slow down. You're looking at the evolution of this thing. However, we can resort back in exile to the pre-exilic familial cult system, which was just as relevant because this is where the priestly system was derived from. This is important. And I want you guys to see this and to understand this. All right. And it goes on to say, on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the produce of the land, you shall celebrate the feast of Yod-Heh-Wav 7 days. On the first day shall be a solemn rest, and on the 8th day shall be a solemn rest. So a first day, right, of 7 days, and then an 8th day. You're given that extra 8th day to finish gathering everything in, right? This is important. And you shall take on the first day the fruit of splendid trees, branches of palm trees, and boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before Yod-Heh-Wav 7 days. Again, a custom, okay? You shall celebrate as a feast of Yod-Heh-Wav for 7 days in the year. It is a statute forever throughout your generations. You shall celebrate in the 7th month. It's a statute forever throughout your generation. So if this is a statute, and we went to Deuteronomy Chapter 30, where the Most High says, while you're scattered, he wants us to wake up and get back into covenant with him, and then you get away from the consequences and get back into the benefits, which is the blessings, and away from the curses, is an expectation for us to continue this. How? If we're in exile, there's no temple, no priest, you return back to the familial cult system. You return back to the household way of doing things, as opposed to the nationalistic way of doing things. See, these things tend to be overlooked by people who have agendas as it pertains to the text. So what we're doing is we are removing those things, and we're showing you guys that the Most High has an expectation of you to keep these things. How can we return back to it? Well, I'm giving you that way of doing that. All right, so let's keep going. Again, always look for what? Nuances. You shall dwell in booths for 7 days. All native Israelites shall dwell in booths for 7 days, that your generations may know that I made the people of Israel dwell in booths. So now the memorial. Why are you doing this? It says, because I made the people of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Mizraim. I am Yod-Heh-Wav Eloheka, your power. Thus Moshe declared to the people of Israel the appointed feast of Yod-Heh-Wav. So the important thing that we have to understand here is the offering. So can you still give offerings? Yes, you can. What you mean? Yes, you can. When you restore back to a pre-exilic familial cult, this is how you do it. You create a shrine. Because our shrine, oh my God. Yeah, did you know that they made shrines in their homes? That was not against Torah at all. And I had discussions in the past on this channel with people who wanted to debate me on that. And if anybody disagrees with that, have a discussion. There's nothing wrong with a shrine. What a shrine is a dedicatory elements or a construct that you built that is devoted to the deity, and it's sometimes placed somewhere in the home. Now, a lot of people know about shrines because of other indigenous cultures and their spiritual systems, but Israel was an indigenous culture with a spiritual system, and the people had shrines. Now, I'll save that for another lesson where I go into all the shrines that was created. There's nothing wrong with shrines, but why am I bringing up the word shrine? It's because you can give a food offering, a grain offering, and a drink offering to these shrines. Well, how do you do so? Well, you create these platforms in the shrine, and on one platform, you place food. So if you have a feast, you take a portion of each one of those feasts, and you place it onto the shrine to dedicate it to Yod-Heh-Wav. This is the familial cult system. And then you put a little bowl there, take some of what you're drinking and pour a little bit in the bowl. What this is signifying is that you are giving thanks back unto the Creator and giving him back a portion, because he's the one that allowed you to get the items that you're eating on your table with your family. So what the shrine does is that it causes you to remember, just like wearing the fringes, it causes you to remember to place the deity first. So as you make the meal, before you eat it, you take a portion of all the things you're going to feast on, you put it on a platform, and you dedicate it to the deity. Now, after you eat and you finish eating, that food can either be discarded or it can be consumed by the family afterwards. All right. So again, this puts you back into the mindset of giving an offering, a food offering, a grain offering, a drink offering. Some people may say sacrifices, right? So it depends on what these things may be. If you eat butchered meat, right? Like some people may eat lamb, may have turkey, chicken, or whatever the case may be, beef. This was butchered. This can be sacrificial for something that you set aside for no consumption, but it's a portion of meat that you set aside to be the offering portion. So you can put some of the food portion, the burnt portion, because you can roast some of these food and use that as a burnt offering. Take some grains, put some grain offerings there. The sacrifice, which is the butchered meat that you don't eat, and a drink offering or a libation that you pour of wine into a bowl. And you do this on each day that you eat in order for you to show reverence to the deity that allowed your family to consume these things. Don't let anybody tell you that you cannot keep this feast outside the land, because you can. Because when it was first kept for 40 years, it was outside the land. And even afterwards, like we said, we see them in the diaspora, Israel scattered in diaspora after the exile of Babylon. We see even in Elephantine Island, the Israelites that were there were keeping Passover and unleavened bread outside the land. These things wasn't fully codified by then, because if it was, and they had the understanding of what we see in Shemot, in Vayikra and Devarim or Deuteronomy, then they wouldn't be asking instructions on how to do it locally. They would say, hey, we're going to make a pilgrimage there and we're going to do it there. This is evidence to show that this stuff was not finalized until Persian captivity. Now, follow me. Just walk with me. Walk with me. Let's go into Bamidbar 29, 12 to 40, right? It says, on the 15th day of the 7th month, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work, and you shall keep the feast to Yod-Heh-Wav 7 days. And you shall offer a burnt offering, a feed offering with a pleasing aroma to Yod-Heh-Wav, 13 bulls from the herd, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, a year old. They shall be without blemish. And their grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each of the 13 bulls, 2/10 for each of the 2 rams. Keep going. And a 10th for each of the 14 lambs. So people will say, well, look at this here. You see this right here? We can't do none of this here. And I tell them simply, again, as we go into Shemot, Vayikra, Numbers, and we get to Devarim, you see the evolution of new regulation that's being added over time. As this thing is developing into a national set-apart day, right? Where all the people congregate in one particular set-apart location, okay? Prior to that, it was done in a household. So now we see the things are now being required that you have to give from your flocks. Now, everybody doesn't have a farm and they can't provide these things. As a community, we had a community farm. We probably could provide these things, but that would be inconvenient in modern day times. So this portion here, we know that now we see the development of these things happening as being required by the priest, and now it's becoming a national set-apart day that we see in exiles being written. And I'm going to show you some stuff of some insight from some scholars why they believe that that's the case, right? But what I'm simply trying to explain to you guys is that this can be done if you go back to the pre-exilic system that we teach here, right? It goes on to say, and also 1 male goat for a sin offering besides a regular burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Remember, in Vayikra, it's not specific. As we get into Numbers, it becomes more specific. Again, development. On the 2nd day, 12 bulls from the herd, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, a year old without blemish, with the grain offering and the drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs in the prescribed quantities. Also, 1 male goat for a sin offering besides the regular burnt offering and its grain offering and their drink offerings. On the 3rd day, 11 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, a year old without blemish, with the grain offering and the drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs in the prescribed quantities. And also 1 male goat for a sin offering besides a regular burnt offering and its grain offering and its drink offering. On the 4th day, 10 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, a year old without blemish, with the grain offering and the drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs in the prescribed quantities. Also, 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the regular burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. On the 5th day, 9 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, a year old without blemish, with the grain offering and the drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs in the prescribed quantities. Also, 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the regular burnt offerings and its grain offerings and its drink offerings. On the 6th day, 8 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, a year old without blemish, with the grain offering and the drink offering for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs in the prescribed quantities. And 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the regular burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offerings. On the 7th day, 7 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, a year old without blemish, with the grain offering and the drink offering for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs in the prescribed quantities. And also 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the regular burnt offering, its grain offerings, and its drink offerings. On the 8th day, you shall have a solemn assembly. You shall do no ordinary work, but you shall offer a burnt offering, a food offering with a pleasing aroma to Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, a year old without blemish, and the grain offering and the drink offerings for the bull, for the ram, and for the lambs, and the prescribed quantities. And also 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides a regular burnt offering and its grain offerings and its drink offering. These you shall offer to Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh at your appointed feasts, in addition to your vow offerings and your freewill offerings, for your burnt offerings, and for your grain offerings, and for your drink offerings, and for your peace offerings. So Moshe told the people of Israel everything just as Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh had commanded Moshe. Again, this now becomes a communal, collective effort that is now involving the priesthood. And now we're going to see the cap on this in Deuteronomy Chapter 16 and verse 13 to 15. All right, so let me get and pull it out. Again, I can't see nothing you guys are saying, but I'm going to go into this and examine it later. But let's go ahead and check this out. All right, and stop this. Let's go back into it. All right, Deuteronomy chapter 16. Again, it says the Feast of Booths. Okay, and it gives you other cross references. All right, a lot of this you can get from the TSK, the Treasury of Scriptural Knowledge, which is a source that shows you all correlating scriptures. Okay, and there's a methodology for how they're correlating scriptures. Right. In this case, we know we're talking about the Feast of Booths, Feast of Ingathering, so they're able to correlate the scriptures just by that reference alone. Again, when you go into this course that I mentioned for the Hebrew, right, the Essentials course, you can follow everything that I'm showing you. Okay, it says you shall keep the Feast of Booths 7 days when you have gathered in the produce from your threshing floor and wine press. Remember, I mentioned that to you. Okay, you shall rejoice in your feast, you and your son and your daughter, your male servant and your female servant, the Levite, the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow who are within your towns. The key word says towns, within your towns when you're doing this. Okay, keep this in mind. For 7 days, you shall keep the feast of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, your power, at the place that Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh will choose, because Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, your power, will bless you in all your produce and all the work of your hands, so that you will be altogether joyful. Now, here you see something that we don't see anywhere else, where it says, in the place that he will choose. However, we don't even see the word Jerusalem here. And this is interesting, because remember, it is believed now by academians, scholars, and people who are astute in the text that this was a redaction, okay, that comes much later on, right? And these redactions was done there specifically. Now, watch this. If the essence of this was written pre-exile, during the time of the Exodus, before they settled into the land, then it would be obvious why they don't have Jerusalem there, because they didn't get into the land yet, and yet the Most High did not allow Jerusalem to be that sacred place. There was another place, more than one other place, that was sacred before Jerusalem became the sacred place. All of that is a totally different discussion. All I'm simply saying is look for the nuances. You'll see things like, why don't say Jerusalem here? Why is it saying booths now? This is all interesting. I'm going to give you some sources you can look into yourselves. And again, if you subscribe to the Patreon, we have tons of sources for all of this stuff on there already. All right. It says 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, your power, at the place that he will choose, at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, at the Feast of Weeks, and at the Feast of Booths. They shall not appear before Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh empty-handed. What do you mean by empty-handed? Well, we went into all the things that we see in Vayikra and Bamidbar, or Leviticus and Numbers, that you are required to give or provide as a community, right? This is important. However, when we go to Shemot, we don't see that there. This is important. So I know some of y'all probably say, well, how do you reconstruct this now? We got this information, I understand, but day to day, Divine, how would you reconstruct it? Well, I just explained it to y'all, right? The first night you feast. During the day, you rest, right? Because you feasted. You drank a little wine, got a little tipsy, ate a lot of food. You're not going to be coherent enough to work the next day. So you rest from your occupational waivers, right? And for the next couple of days, again, as you're preparing food, you have a little shrine constructed in your corner. And again, y'all may want to see, well, Divine, you have a shrine. We'll save all of this for another discussion, right? And then you give your food offering, your grain offering, the sacrifice. I explain all of this to you. And you do this for 7 days. And on the 8th day, you feast that last day. And then during that day portion period, you rest from your labors, okay? Now, if you have a field, okay, gather all your stuff in for the field and use the rest of the year to sow. All right. This is the final reaping of everything in your garden or in your farm, in your backyard. Anybody that has those things, which I recommend you have a little, if you don't have access to a farm or don't own a farm, then create a little garden, all right, in your backyard. All right. And if you live in an apartment, you can do so. Set apart a windowsill area somewhere in your kitchen, dining room, whatever, and create a little garden with at least herbs or something else, you know, root vegetables or something else that you can grow. Just so that way you can get into the mindset of what they thought and what they experienced during that period of time. Okay. Trust me, it's extremely humbling and it keeps you at the mercy of Yah, right? Because now you are going into the shoes of those ancestors and things that they had to do. Again, it's a memorial. Okay. So I'm sharing all this because I want you guys to understand what is going on here. So we're going to transition into the sources. Okay. So hopefully you guys are enjoying what's there so far. Shout out to Sister Melinda, 1973. Thank you so much for the donation, sis. I truly appreciate it. She says, Shalom, brother. Shalom, family. New subby. Thank you so much, sis. Hit the thumbs up button, sis. Please go back and check out the archive. We have tons of content on this type of information and more that I'm sure that you will love. All right. Thank you so much for that, sis. I appreciate it. And family, hopefully you guys are enjoying it so far. Hit one so I know you can enjoy that you're enjoying it. So that way, Tara said, did I hear get tipsy? Yes, you heard get tipsy. All right. So sometimes we use that type of vernacular here on this channel. I got to keep it a buck. This is how we do it here. All right. So again, family, hit that one button if you're enjoying it. Let me move on to the sources. I want to show you guys some interesting stuff that I know you will enjoy. All right. So hit that one so we can proceed. All right. All right. So as we do that, I'm going to bring up the next resource. And that is, I want to show you guys what's called a diagram of sources of the Pentateuch by Brian Arthur Brown. And pretty much what this is going to lay out for you is one of many hypotheses in regards to how the Chumash, or the first 5 books, was put together. The earliest portions of it, the middle portions of it, and the latter portions of it. And I want to show you this distinctly so you can understand the things that I was just mentioning earlier. We have another source that was that's utilized for us to understand the time periods of when these things were put together. Now check this out, family. Check this out. All right, let me bring it on the screen so you can take a look at it. All right, I may have to zoom in a little bit more so that way it's clear on the screen. All right, so here it is right here. So the first thing we want to take a look at is Shemot chapter 23, verse 16, or Exodus chapter 23. What we're going to do is we're going to scroll down here to Exodus 23, right? And as you can see here, it says ethics and aliens, 23, 1 to 33. So verse 16 is incorporated into this, right? And as you can see, it's color-coded, right? We have a green color, right? So if we scroll down, we want to see, what does this green color represent? Well, it represents what's called the Elohis, okay? The Elohis portion, or the Elohist signature of the Chumash. It says materials and green initially used a generic and more ancient word Elo, which is Allah in Arabic for God, and were written about 850 BCE in the separatist northern kingdom of Israel as a reply to J by the Levitical priests, whereas Abraham's persona remained supreme in the south. That of Moses dominated the north among the Levites, who eventually edited J and E together into one document, the first hybrid evolution of the text. Now, some of that is technical, requires me to unpack a little bit more, but I'm just going to summarize it, right? The E is representative of the northern tribe Israelites. They say it goes back to 850 BCE. I'm proposing that oral tradition, it goes back further. Written, it goes back to 850, but orally, it goes back further. And I showed you guys a source earlier on orality of the text. And again, we can discuss that another time. But the reason why I'm showing this is because in the northern section, in northern parts, this was something that was done communal within the household of familial cults, okay? Don't think of that word cult as a bad thing when we're talking now. Cult has a particular definition, right? Or denotation. It gets bad connotations later, but a familiar code is just things that are done within a household by the family in regards to relating to their culture. This is the word cult is in culture, okay? But let's check this out. If we go to Exodus 34 and 22, right? 34, it says 2 to 4, 4c to 28. Check this out. That goes back to the J account, which is the Yahweh's account. Materials in pink use the divine name Yahweh, Yehovah for Elohim, and were written about 900 BCE by someone in King David's literary family or by a member of the royal household. Other such documents would include Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastics, and the Song of Solomon. Islam presents an ancient template for the literary activities of such leading households that almost certainly included female writers, which is very interesting. And again, I'll pack that another time. The thing we want to understand about the Yahweh is that this is believed to be sources from the south, which would be Judah, Benjamin, Levi, right? And even during the south, when we read 34 and 22, you still see a primitive form of it that was written down at about 900 BCE, but the orality, the oral portion of it goes back further. This is important. Now, check this out. When we go to Vayikra chapter 23 or Leviticus chapter 23, right? Right here, where it says the festival of booths, we get what color? Yellow. Different color than pink, different color than green. Let's read it. This is the priests in Aaron's line. Check this out. Defending their prerogatives at the temple establishment, reacted with a sophisticated theological document shown in yellow when the Levites moved as refugees to Jerusalem after the decimation of Israel by Assyria in 721 BCE, producing a tightly edited version of JE as their entree into the royal court and public acceptance. The P document was later integrated into the whole by cut and paste techniques. And again, I've talked about textual criticism on here before. I can get into it in another lesson. However, there's ways to identify these things, right? Identify signatures, styles, to see if something is coherent within the narrative, if it's something that looks like it was just inserted, you know what I'm saying? The way the syntax is used, what grammar is utilized there. All of these things are extremely important to see the cohesiveness of different passages within a particular context, okay? It says the prophet Ezekiel was associated with the tradition of Aaron's priesthood, because, Ezekiel was a priest, okay? From the time of King Hezekiah into Babylon, exile in Babylonia. So what this is showing is that this is dated, the written form of it, to 721 BCE. So what we have here is the J elements, Yahweh elements, orally goes back far, and then the E is slightly neck to neck with it, but the P comes much later on, and it's something that the priests have inserted. Regulations that come much later on in regards to this. Now, Hezekiah is extremely important. Hezekiah and Josiah. Remember these names because they were the ones that it was believed from the royal lineage to have established and nationalized these feast days. All right. So these things were done by David, Solomon, etc. But it was Hezekiah and Josiah's reforms that made it more nationalistic. Right. So as we transition further, we go to Devarim chapter 16, verses 13 and 15. This is important. Now let's check it out. Right. Actually, we did Numbers, right? We did Numbers as well. All right, let's go to Numbers. The verse we did in Numbers. Okay. Numbers 1 to 39, review of festivals, right? Check this out. It's in gray. Now, before we get to gray, let's get to blue first, right? Because that was written later in Numbers. But let's get to Deuteronomy chapter 16, right? Passover emphasis, it says here, right? Verses 1 to 22, but it's also, Feast of Booths is included in there. If you scroll down, let's look at blue. Blue is Deuteronomy in blue. Let me zoom in because it might be small. Let me zoom in so you guys can see it. All right. So it says Deuteronomy in blue, translate as the second book of the law, coming after the popular JE document produced in Jerusalem by the Levites using the ancient commandments with annotations, which they found in the temple during renovations by King Josiah, who they saw as a Messiah figure, another David. After Judah too was defeated, its king tortured, and its temple desecrated, the main compiler of Deuteronomy, possibly Baruch, we see him in Apocrypha, the secretary to the prophet Jeremiah, re-edited the document to the form in which we have it, reflecting expectations of a more eternal and universal fulfillment of the Most High's messianic promises, as later accepted also by Christians and Muslims. Baruch may have also produced Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, the northern priest, prophet priest, and 1st and 2nd Kings, monarchs, north and south, good and bad. Now we're seeing this time period. This happens much later. We're talking about King Josiah now. and Baruch, who comes afterwards, who's contemporary of Jeremiah. If we get back to the gray of Numbers, chapter 29, check this out. The return from the exile of the Jewish aristocracy, priesthood, and civil service to rejoin the farmers, Levites, and others left behind required a unified vision to rebuild Jerusalem, the temple, and a functioning state of Judah. Ezra, as redacted, edited the 4 sets of documents above into one compendium, modeling on the success of J.E., but with a brilliance that earned him the appellation the second Moshe. His work, the most intricate masterpiece in world literature until now, was accepted so completely that for 2,000 years, people took the compendium known as the Pentateuch to be by one author, namely Moshe himself, who actually lived 500 years before there was a written form of Hebrew. Ezra's work, the Jewish Torah, as the foundation of that culture and of hundreds of national cultures since then, now takes its place as a foundational cornerstone of emerging world culture. The documentary hypothesis of the origins of the Pentateuch has become documentary evidence, so much greater than the sum of its parts and entirely worthy of the appellation, the Word of God. Now, you see there the documentary hypothesis, which is one of many ways to explain the differences and the doublets and the nuances that we find in the signature of the Chumash, right? That is one of the earliest ways of discerning it. However, there are newer forms today, and these newer forms borrow from this and then have their own twist to it, all right? Now, I have my own position as well, but I'm showing you this because this is the template for my position. However, I've done some revisions and things that I felt that needed to be tweaked, and that some passages that they say was older or later actually is cohesive within what we see there. Again, this is from the Wellhausen family of textual criticism, which I'm not a fan of. However, what they saw is something that I identify as well, but I try to do so from a more Israelite indigenous perspective to try to show you the evolution of the culture and how the culture evolved to adapt to the needs of the people, depending upon the social, economic, and political stresses that they were encountering. Okay, this is extremely important. Extremely relevant. So please keep that information in mind. Again, this resource will be available on the Patreon, or if you want it, you can email me at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. We can provide it for you. All right. Now, I wanted to get into that so you guys can understand that it's important. Now let's get into our sources in regards to the material culture by means of the familial cults. Now, I gave you these 2 books as references in the past. It's also available on the Patreon. But again, what I first dealt with was what? I told you the 3 witnesses. The first part I dealt with was the non-material culture or the literature. The second part is what? The material culture left behind by the people of the biblical culture, okay? The material culture they left behind, which we find by means of archaeology, right? And both of these things fall in the heading of anthropology to help us to look at these things a little further. You have arts and humanities and social sciences, right? Archaeology goes into your social sciences, and your art and humanities is where your literature falls, which is the text. So these are 2 witnesses, right? And then what I'm going to give you a final witness. Remember the living culture that preserved a lot of these things, okay? That helps us to understand or bring these 2 other witnesses together cohesively. Again, when we do these Bible studies, quote unquote, we show you these techniques. We give you these sources, and then I show you the actual methodology, right? Step-by-step methodology. Start with a problem question or inquiry, and it leads you to a hypothesis, which then leads you to a thesis, which then leads to a final conclusion. But it's a entire process with steps in between that you have to continuously fill in and do, whether that's exhuming data, knowing the consensus of the field, whatever presuppositional knowledge that you have helps to build your hypothesis, etc. It's different steps that you did take in order for you to get to a final conclusion, right? So let's get into the archaeology, which is the material culture. Now check this out. Okay, check this out. Let me bring it up. All right. So again, family, if you're enjoying this, hit the thumbs up. Hit the thumbs up. If you're enjoying it, hit the thumbs up. If you're enjoying it, family, hopefully you guys like it. Make sure you share the video. Again, like I said, on our Patreon is where we share a lot of this information as far as resources is concerned. It's always the 24/7, 365 after party that everybody needs to be a part of if they follow this ministry. Okay, because again, this stuff is pertinent because we don't get gems like this elsewhere. I've scoured. Every year I scour the internet, social media for congregations that teach on Sukkot, and I never see these nuances brought out, right? But we're going to get into the ingathering. Remember I told you about the ingathering and then Sukkot. There's a reason why it transitioned from ingathering to Sukkot. All right, let's check out these resources. Let me go ahead and grab it for you, okay? Shout out to Alex McCaskill in the building. Thank you for joining us. Willie Littlejohn, Hebrew descendant. Thank you for joining us. Sandra Curry, Damon Baziel. Thank you so much. Salt Set Apart Living Torah Community. What's going on? My brother King David, the Lucid Fire. What's up? What's up? Emmanuel Curry. Thank you for joining us. Carolyn Shelton. What's up? What's up? Ashley G. You have a question? I'm not going to answer your question right now, sis. Please save it for the end. All right. We have another 30 to 45 minutes to rock out by I think about 45 minutes, right? 2-hour mark. We should be done with this. Again, I'm going to try to pile as much as I can in here and save at least 20 minutes for a Q&A. All right. So save that for the end. All right. All right. So let's move forward. Let's move forward. All right. Shout out to Jeremiah Seraphine in the building as well. What's going on? My sister Nisi's Pieces. What's up? What's up? All right. All right. So let's go ahead and bring up this second portion of it. All right, I'm going to show you these sources right here. All right, check this out. Check this out. I know you're going to like this. Hopefully you'll like it. Those of you who are regulars of this channel, you'll enjoy it. If you're not, hopefully we can inspire you to enjoy these things, right? Now, let me show you something real quick, all right? I'm going to show you the what book this is from. Matter of fact, let me show you the book, the name of the book. Okay, it's on page 399. Let me show you the name of the book so you can see it real quick. All right, let me bring it up on the screen. Here we go. All right. The name of this book is called Family and Household Religion in Ancient Israel and the Levant by Rainer Alberts and Rudiger Schmidt. Okay. And now what we're going to do is going to scroll down to page 399. All right. Check this out. 399. All right. And let me zoom in so y'all guys can see it. All right. Hopefully this is big enough. All right. It says rites, rituals, and observances set by the calendar. Now, I know we're talking about Sukkot, but this right here goes into unleavened bread and Passover, right? Or Passover. However, the principle is still the same. And when I show you the secondary source, it'll confirm that. But check this out, right? It says here, let me highlight it so y'all can see. It is widely agreed that Exodus 12, 21 to 23, and we're talking about Exodus, remember, right? Remember I told us pre-exilic during the time of the wilderness wandering, right? Represents the most ancient pre-exilic core of the Passover ritual, later adopted by P in Exodus 12, 1 to 13 during the situation of exile. Although the priestly Passover account represents a notably advanced stage of its development, elements of the older traditions are represented in Exodus 12, 21 to 23, 12, 8 to 11, and 12, 3 to 4, reveal its original familial setting. That means family, household. The Passover ritual was celebrated in families that include the slaughter of a lamb and the application of blood on the doorpost and lintel to represent the Mashit demon, right? Requisite elements of the family Passover meal, as explicated in Exodus 12, verses 1 to 3 and verses 8 to 11, included one lamb for each family roasted on the fire to be eaten at night together with unleavened bread and bitter herbs with girded loins. It was to be eaten in haste, for none of it was to remain. All right. It says it was noteworthy that all ritual actions described in Exodus 12, 1 to 3, 8 to 11, 20, 20 were conducted by laymen within a family setting, not by priests or Levites. That is important. It says, according to Dom, the festival served both to establish borders between the world of the family and the wider non-Israelite world beyond, and to secure the identity of lineages and households during the exile. The chronicling of the feast and its connection with the Exodus may already have been part of its essence, regardless of its unverifiable age, or may have been introduced during the post-exilic period to ensure national and religious identity by means of a commemorative rite. In contrast to its original ritual setting in a family context, Deuteronomy 16:1-8 depicts a centralized Passover festival in which the slaughter and consumption of Passover animals needed to take place at the temple. The character of the consumed animal had thus been transformed into a zabach offering, and the Passover, as now associated with the agricultural festival, unleavened bread, Matzot, was thus transformed into a pilgrimage festival. In its form as a pilgrimage festival, it can no longer be celebrated after the destruction of the temple and the deportation to Babylon and wider regions of Neo-Babylonian Empire. The priestly adoption of Passover in Exodus 12, 1 to 13 is thus a response to the needs of exilic communities for families living abroad to be permitted to celebrate Passover. Only the slaughtering of the Passover lambs take place communally, but the Passover meal proper is explicitly held in familial context. Following the exile, the Holiness Code, Leviticus 23:48, again promoted the character of the Passover as a pilgrimage feast analogous to the Masot festival. Moreover, access to the festival was restricted to participants who were circumcised. All right, now I'm gonna stop there. You get the point. Again, it started as a familial practice amongst families and households locally within local communities. And then over time, it turned into a national set-apart day. This is important. Scholars are able to see this when they deal with the text objectively. I deal with the text objectively to remove the presuppositions and dogma that I was taught by Judeo-Christian world. I use the methodology of academia to strip away that dogma so I can get to the nitty-gritty of what is going on and be able to reconcile that with my indigenous Israelite cultural system. Let's get to the next source. Okay, next source, page 231. Keep that in mind, but let's scroll up so you can see the name of the source. The name of the source is, again, it's like a follow-up to the previous one we just saw. It's called Family and Household Religion Toward the Synthesis of Old Testament Studies, Archaeology, Epigraphy, and Cultural Studies. It's edited by Raina Alberts, Beth Albert Nakai, Saul M. Oleon, and Rudiger Schmidt. Okay, now check this out. Let's go to page 231. I want to show you this. Okay, 231. All right, zoom in. See, this is religious folk. It's hard for them to understand this stuff because they have their mindset, and based on their dogma, this is how it's supposed to be done. You can't do it other than that. It's like, wait, slow down. Like, you're not understanding what's going on. Let me walk you through it so you can understand. Right? Page 231. Let's walk through. It says the pilgrim festivals originated as family feasts in or near the domicile. Is suggested by the Passover stipulation in Exodus 12. Another possibility is that Exodus 12 is a late text, setting a custom that still dominates a household Passover in a time before the existence of a centralized temple cult. So you have the familial cult and the temple cult. Familial cult is the template that originated first. The temple cult develops much later out of the familial cults. This passage enjoins individual households to join together to celebrate if they are too small to consume the entire sacrificial lamb in one evening on their own, and it indicates that the festal meal takes place within a domicile, a home. Similarly, the Deuteronomic command not to observe the Passover in any of your settlements implies that this festival was formerly observed at local shrines or even within the household. The other two major feasts, besides, hold on one second, fam. I got somebody from the voting team thing by my door. Give me 1 second. I'll be right with you. Right. Hey, Kevin Jones. Stop that. Stop that, Kevin. All right? Because that's stuff that I deal with as well. Again, just hold off on that, Kevin. You're giving too much to the people. Don't give it to them yet, okay? I appreciate that. So this is the thing that they gave me. Let me show it to you. They just came to my door and dropped this off to me. All right? This is what they sent to me. Because, you know, the voting thing is taking place. I stress to y'all, local and state voting. If you want to do presidential, that's on you, but Electoral College puts that guy in place. Local and state voting is important. I did a whole video on voting called Vote or Nope. Check it out. It's called Vote or Nope. Can somebody drop that link in the chat so people can go back and check out the video that I did on voting, okay? But yeah, this is it right here. This is what they sent to me. So this is what they interrupted us for. They wanted me to get this guy, vote for this guy, but, you know, it is what it is, all right? Let's put this to the side. Let's get back to where we was at. All right. All right. But yeah, Kevin, you understand what I'm getting. Again, I spoke about this in the past. I'm going to hold off and talking about our Igbo peoples, right? That I have Igbo ancestry as well. But we're going to talk about that another time. However, the information that you're getting here, you can contrast this with other groups that claim Israelite ancestry, okay? But let's continue reading, all right? The other two major feasts, because they too are keyed to the agricultural calendar. What's that? Shavuot and Sukkot likely follow a similar pattern. They were originally household and regional festivals that later became centralized and historicized. Late Iron Age centralization of the cult probably did not eliminate the celebration of festivals in households and local communities for pragmatic reasons. It is improbable that all Israelites would have left their homes for a week or more, and also questionable that one city, Jerusalem, could have accommodated that many visitors. Note, too, the report in Nehemiah 8, 13, and 19 that booths was observed in households as well as in the temple precincts. The people made booths for themselves, each on their roofs of their houses, and in their courts and in the courts of their house of God. Also, the structure of Passover in early rabbinic times is that of a meal, the Seder. Remember, I went over this, and likely reflects household Passover feasts of biblical times. Clearly, these annual agricultural festivals were household feasts, whether celebrated in local domiciles, regional community shrines, or the Jerusalem temple. Okay, this is important. So now I'm giving you this development so you guys can see clearly what's going on here. All right. Now, these two books that I just mentioned to y'all also shows you some of what was done in these households as far as the familiar cult is concerned, right? Let me see if I can find something real quick, because I didn't really have this in what I want to share right now with you guys. But let me see if I can find something here. Let me see if I can find something real quick. Let me go here. Let me scroll up. Let's see. Nah, I can't find anything right now off the rim. I want to show you guys some pictures. I want to show you guys some pictures, but I may not have any here, unfortunately, because I didn't really plan on that part. But I want to give you guys a visual. Yeah. Yeah, all the images I have here is other items outside of what we're discussing. So that's not going to be helpful for you. All right. Now, the shrine, let me see if I have an image of one of these ancient shrines. I have the house plan, and in the house, it was a silo, and there was also a shrine in the Israelite house. You know what? Let me show you this to y'all. Maybe y'all want to take a look at this. This is kind of cool right here. Let me show this to y'all. All right. Hold on. All right. This is a reconstruction of a typical Israelite four-room house. Okay. As you can see, this is the roof. Remember we were seeing what Nehemiah was talking about as far as the roof. This would be the roof. This would be the upper floor. This would be the main floor. Okay. You see, they would keep the cattle here, or the donkeys here, or the sheep and the goats here, and they would give them fodder, which is feeding for them. Upstairs, they would come here, lay a mat on the floor, because they slept on the floor, on a mat on the floor. Right. And then you'll see over here, work is being done here. This woman is kneading some dough, right, for some flour. They're making some bread with it. This person over here, not sure what she's doing over here. It looks like she's probably, because of the pictures over here, pithoys over here. So she's probably sifting through the drink for the home. And then you see here we have the sleeping quarters up here. Normally you'll have your shrine not far from where the family communal area is at, which will be this place right here. You have another bedroom over here on the back. Okay. So this stuff is important so you can understand how they lived. All right. This is extremely important. Okay. So let me see if I can find another image that can probably help with what we're talking about. Let me see. I see tons of votive offerings, ceramics in regards to pottery. Here's something right here. Let me zoom in. Here's something right here. This shows a stand altars, right, and a JPF, Judean pillar figurine. All right, I went over this previous with y'all, so if y'all don't know what that is, you can check out the video I did. Here you see here, right? Here's the altars right here that they have, the stands and a JPF figurine here. All right. Let me see if I can find the one with the shrine. I don't want to take up too much time looking for it. If I can't find it, then I may have to bring it out another time. Let me see. Yeah, I won't be able to find it right now. I mean, they show you houses with rooms that have shrines, but I know there was one that was a picture of a shrine. Here, let me show you this right here. Maybe this will help. There you go, right there. Now, remember, the text tells you on how altars and shrines are to be created, and they're supposed to be rough, uncut stones. All right. So this is an example of one of those things. This is a cultic shrine with a stele, which is that little thing that let me point to it. This little thing right here is your stele. All right, and this is how the rocks are arranged in a particular way, so that the way they identify and they know that it is a shrine in a room of a house or of a local gathering area, right? And they showed you tons of different artifacts that are there. Yeah, it's too much here for me to go through right now, but let's move on. All right. Oh, actually, you know what? The cover. Duh. Let me show you the cover. The cover actually has an image of a reconstructed shrine. Let's take a look. All right, let me zoom in so you guys can see. All right, so this is right here is your shrine with your votive offerings right here. Your little shrine with your votive offerings right here. This is how they would eat on the floor. This would be the general communal room where the family would come and eat and talk. So you know that tradition of let's come to the table and eat as a family without the TV, the phones, and all of that. Well, this is how the family got together, because outside of this, the family would be doing different roles within the house, the children, the women, the men. But when it came time to eat, it was a centralized area. As you can see here, there's no distinctions that show men, women, and children, because they ate as a family. Remember, I told you about the egalitarian model, where everybody was seen equal, not in regards to role, but in regards to value within the family. All right. There's no separation in regards to the men, women, and children when it comes to eating. This is extremely important when understanding Israelite culture. Okay. So you see this, right? So a little shrine is up here. And here's the eating. And this is the ladders that lead you to upstairs. There's a ladder that leads to downstairs. And there's other rooms in the house. It's one of the windows would look like. All right. So this is important. All right. So I'm glad you guys are able to see this reconstruction. So again, it can zap you back into history. All right. All right. Are y'all following? Let's stay on track in regards to the subject matter. Sorry for the distraction as far as the voting, but please let's stay on track as far as the subject matter. Okay, let's stay on track as far as the subject matter, family. All right. All right. So let's transition to the final part. All right. So the final part of this, and after this, I'm gonna open it up for the Q&A. I'm trying to get this done as quick as possible. The final part is looking at a living culture. Okay. Now, before we can look at a modern day living culture, let's see some references to its antiquated counterparts, right? Or antiquated ancestry. Okay. Now, you may have heard this term used before. It's called the shashu, right? Shashu back then, and that's the name. It's believed to come from Egyptian. That means to wander, but we're going to look into that. Is now developed into today in the word Bedouin. So your modern day Bedouins, their historical ancestry goes back to the Shashu. And a lot of those modern day Bedouins today live just like the Shashu did during their time period. And I'm going to prove this to you, right? Within the land of Israel today. Check this out, right? Let me let y'all see this, all right? So let's go back into it. Let me bring up the source for y'all to see. All right, and bring it up on the screen real quick. All right, now this is from an article that you guys can type in and look for. Hold on, so I didn't put the source in here. but I want to show y'all the source. Let me show you guys the source. Because, you know, I always got to give sources. That's what I try to do. I always try to give sources, right? All right. I'm going to drop the source in the chat so you guys have it. Okay. It's from BibleArchaeology.org. It's a repost that they're posting. Okay. Now, let me hone into this important stuff so I can get into the final source, Bedouin culture in the Bible, and then we can get into the questions and answers. Okay. All right. All this has to do with Sukkot. Now we're looking at more cultural things. Now check this out. All right. Let me put it on the screen. All right. So it says here the name Yahweh in Egyptian hieroglyphic text. Let me zoom in so you guys can see it. All right. It is generally accepted that the term Shashu means nomads or Bedouin people, referring primarily to the nomadic or semi-nomadic peoples of Syria, Palestine. There are two significant hieroglyphic references in New Kingdom period texts to an area called the land of the Shashu of Yod-Heh-Wav. Except for the Old Testament, these are the oldest references found in any ancient text for the power Yahweh or Yod-Heh-Wav. And again, it's spelled Yod-Heh-Wav. That's the name or the spelling that I use, the orthography of the name that I utilize in regards to the Most High, because it's the most antiquated reference and it's the most familial. Remember I told you familial cults? Another thing about reading those sources in regards to the familial cults, the household, you know, community, stuff like that, is the nomenclature or the when you go to onomastics and you study the naming schemes, familial naming schemes, you have Yod-Heh-Wav, like Eliyahu, Yeshayahu, Yirmyahu. That Yahu is a nomenclature that comes from the family because it goes back to the oldest spelling of the deity's name, which is Yod-Heh-Wav. And then over time, we got Yod-Heh-Wav. That's a totally different discussion. I touched on some of that in a lecture that I did earlier this year, late last year, early this year. However, let's keep reading. Among ancient Egyptian designations for types of foreign peoples in the New Kingdom period, the term Shashu occurs fairly frequently. It is generally accepted that the term Shashu means nomads or Bedouin people, referring primarily to the nomadic or semi-nomadic peoples of Syria, Palestine. There are two significant hieroglyphic references in New Kingdom period texts to an area called the land of the Shashu of Yod-Heh-Wav. Except for the Old Testament, these are the oldest references found in any ancient text to the power of Yod-Heh-Wav. The purpose of this paper is to study these two references and assess their possible importance in dating the Exodus story. Now, the reason why I say this is important in regards to the Exodus, because the familial household cults was established after the Israelites came out of the land. It was established for 40 years in Bamim wilderness before they went into the land and before the temple was built. You had the tabernacle, which is the portable temple, right? And then you had the permanent temple done by Solomon. Okay. And then when that permanent temple became established, the priesthood was able to permanently station themselves there. Then we start to see the nationalization of these familial cults practices, right? Or rites. The term Shashu is found in a variety of New Kingdom hieroglyphic texts, including the military, administrative, and diplomatic documents of Thutmose III, Amenhotep II, Thutmose IV, Amenhotep III, Akhenaten, Seti I, Ramses II, Merneptah, and Ramses III. One of the most intriguing of the 19th dynasty documents referring to the Shashu is a letter dated 1192, which states in part, another communication to my lord, we have finished letting the Shashu tribes of Edom pass the fortress of Merneptah, Hotep Her Ma'at, which is in Jekhu, to the pools of Per Atum of Merneptah, Hotep Her Ma'at, which is in Tekhu or Kekhu, to keep them alive and to keep their cattle alive. So again, this is showing you the characteristic of the Shashu Bedouins is that they are nomadic or semi-nomadic, and they look for places of pasture for their cattle. Okay, so this goes to show you one characteristic of it, right? In a historical text outside the Bible, this is important. Okay, note here that the Shashu tribes are linked with the Edomites, a tribal people with their well-known relationship to the Israelites. Note too that these Shashu tribes were settled after they crossed the border into Egyptian territory at Per Atum in Jekhu, or to put in biblical terms, in Pithom in Sukkot. In addition, it should be noted that the Shashu Edomites were animal herders and that they were also, of course, Semites. All right. According to Exodus 1:11, Pithom and the nearby city of Ramses were two storage cities built by the Israelites for Pharaoh during the bondage in Misraim. In addition, the German scholar Siegfried Hermann, who translated the above text, has identified the area of Jehu, where the Shashu Edomites were settled, with the general area of the land of Goshen mentioned in Genesis 46 and 34. The treatment of the Shashu Edomites by the officials of Pharaoh is reminiscent of Pharaoh's earlier treatment of the Israelites in Egypt during the time of Yosef. So you know that story. There was a famine in the land, and Yosef's brothers, who had sold him into slavery, he ended up being a vizier in Misraim, had came back to them because they wanted to request passage into Egypt so they can escape the famine in the land. And then, he sent them away, kept one of his brothers, sent them away. And then the gifts was sent back. Remember, I told you that one of those customs that we lost, the gifts, hospitality, was sent back with them. And then eventually he allowed them to come in 70 strong into Misraim, into biblical Goshen, right, which is known as archaeological site of Avaris. And there's what they settled. Again, they were nomadic tribes, really so semi-nomadic tribes. Again, they move seasonally, right? But I'm gonna show you some insight. Very deep stuff, right? Okay. There are a few references in Egyptian texts to Shashu nomads living in the area of Nubia, south of Egypt. But the vast majority of references are to Shashu living north of Egypt, and it is these Shashu who we focus in on, all right? So I'm going to scroll through all of this, and I'm going to get to, I guess I can reference this. There are two indisputable facts that Old Testament scholars must face when dealing with the hieroglyphic references to the Shashu of Yahweh. First, there's no doubt that the name of the Israelite God Yahweh appears in these hieroglyphic texts at Soleb and Amarna West, and also possibly Medinet Habu. That's a very extremely important site if you guys have followed me over the years, because I brought this up in the past. And second, at Soleb, the reference to Yahweh dates to 1400 BCE during the reign of the Pharaoh Amenhotep III. In other words, Pharaoh Amenhotep III, or at least his scribes, must have at least heard of the Hebrew power Yahweh in circa 1400 BCE. This fact is highly significant when trying to date the exodus of the Israelites from under Moshe. All right. Now, I guess I could read the rest of this. All right. In Exodus 5:2, Pharaoh answers the first request of Moshe to allow the Israelites to go into the desert to worship Yahweh by saying, "Who is Yahweh that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know Yahweh, and besides, I will not let the Israelites go." Pharaoh appears here to be saying that he had never heard of the God Yahweh. This interpretation of Pharaoh's statement is reinforced by Shemot, Exodus 7 and 17, where Elohim responds to Pharaoh, "Thus says Yahweh, by this you will know that I am Yahweh. Behold, I will strike the water that is in the Nile with the staff that is in my hand, and will become as blood." And his third meeting with Moshe and Aaron after the second plague, Pharaoh clearly recognized Yahweh as some sort of deity and asked Moses and Aaron to pray to Yahweh to remove the plague of the frogs in Exodus 8 and 8. If Pharaoh of the Exodus had never before heard of the God Yahweh, this strongly suggests that the Exodus should be dated no later than circa 1400 BCE, because Pharaoh Amenhotep III had clearly heard about Yahweh in circa 1400 BCE. It is clear that there was once a group of Shashu Bedouin nomads living in Syria, Palestine, who are associated with either a deity or a place named Yahweh. It is also clear that the name Yahweh was known to the Egyptians in the 18th dynasty during the reign of Pharaoh Amenhotep III. But it must be admitted at this point that we know also from the Old Testament that there were other worshippers of Yahweh in Canaan who did not go into Egypt and therefore did not leave Egypt at the time of the Exodus. The question thus arises, were they perhaps the Shashu of Yahweh mentioned as Soleb and Amarna? Although we do not have all the information that we wish we did, it is significant that there are no mentions of the Shashu of Yahweh in Egyptian texts earlier than the reign of Amenhotep III. If the group in question were Yahweh followers who never went to Egypt, why are they absent in the topographical lists from the early period in the 18th dynasty, for example, from the extensive topographical list of Thutmose III? The reason may very well be that the Shashu of Yahweh were indeed the Israelites and that they were still living in Egypt in the early 18th dynasty. The fact that the Shashu of Yahweh first appeared on topographical lists under Amenhotep III in circa 1400 BCE fits perfectly with the early date of the Exodus, but this fact presents major problems for those scholars who believe that the Exodus took place during the reign of Pharaoh Ramses II in the 13th century BCE. Now, I'm going to scroll down from here. I just want you to see this, right? Check this out, right? You see, these are some Shashu. It says scene 5 at Pharaoh Meneptah's Canaanite battle release in the Karnak temple. Merenptah binds Shashu prisoners to take back to Egypt, drawing above right picture above left, the Shashu, check this out. A desert-dwelling people are depicted as bearded, wearing short, often tasseled kilts or ankle-length garments and turbans. The texts flanking the scene are largely rhetorical, praising the virtues of the king. They say in short, strong bull, sharp horn, and resolute, who treads down the Asiatics. He causes the chiefs of Kuru or Palestine to cease all boasting with their mouths, right? Now watch this, right? You see this? Fringed borders, okay? They were depicted to have fringed borders. The Shashu, Pharaoh, Meneptah, Canaanite battle release in Karnak Temple, Shashu captives. All right, part of a larger scene, which originally would have depicted Meneptah presenting captives to the god Amun. Text from a loose block, which may have belonged to this scene, reads in the part presentation of tribute by His Majesty to his father Amun. Now, why am I showing you this? Again, I'm giving you some material culture, getting into the inside of the Shashu, who worship Yod-Heh-Wafe. They had beards, and they also had fringes at the border of their garments. This is all what's called the Proto-Israelites before they become established in the land as a people group prominent in the early Iron Age period. Okay? Now, what does any of this information we went over have to do with living cultures today? Can we look at a living culture today and get an idea of what it meant to live in booths? Okay, and then we got the actual tents, right? And I'm gonna get into that information with you. But remember, the familiar cults or the household way of celebrating Passover, unleavened bread, Shavuot, or even tabernacles. At first, it was called the Ingathering when it was familiar, and then when it became nationalistic, it became Sukkot. This is very important for you to understand. Okay. So check this out. Let's get into our last source, and then we open up 10-15 minutes of question and answering. All right. Last source here. All right. Let me bring it up for you guys real quick. Let me show you guys the name of the book first. Okay. Because we always show sources here. Don't let nobody tell you we don't provide sources here. Okay. Check this out. The name of this book is called Bedouin Culture in the Bible by Clinton Bailey. I love this book. I'm not going to say it's 1,000% accurate. Okay. I would say maybe it's about 75%, 80% accurate. 20% is marginal, right? But the 80% is extremely deep because it shows you living cultures that still have kept these traditions that we see in the text. Now, check this out. Let's scroll down to a particular page, right? We're going to go on page right here, where it says Bedouin culture in the biblical home. Now, listen to this. I'm going to read all of this because it's extremely important. All right. And now some people also listen to this like as a podcast while they're doing something. So this is also probably extremely beneficial to those of you who are just listening to it. Right. But this also has images. I'm going to show you something. Check this out. Right. Material culture. In describing its mainly early characters as nomads, the Hebrew Bible provides us with features of their material culture and social behavior that correspond to facets of pre-modern Bedouin life in the same areas, the Negev, Sinai, and the hills and deserts of eastern Canaan. These parallels between Bedouin culture and biblical accounts are particularly evident when seen against the reasons that engendered them. Now, one thing that's important, when you read this book and you're like, yo, these people are still keeping these customs, when you learn those customs that these people are still keeping today, it gives you insight to why they did certain things in the text. It's phenomenal. Let's read. Check this out. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Desert nomads migrating in seasonal search of pasture and water for their livestock need a mobile shelter most of the year. Excuse me. They find it in the tent, which they're able to fold and bind to a pack animal and move from place to place whenever they want. And a dash of humor used to identify themselves as different from settled people. The Bedouins say, our life is a tent pole on a camel. Since most of their migration takes place during the winter rainy season, the Bedouin insulate their tents against rainfall with a roof woven from the hair of the black goats, which they have traditionally raised. Because goat hair swells when wet, the individual hairs in the roof widen, making for a secure surface impervious to rain, no matter how heavy. Seen from a distance, these roofs after a shower have an attractive sheen, which is reflected in the biblical simile of the beauty of nomad tents. I am black and beautiful, O girls of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar. Song of Songs 1-5. Such a roof is held up by tent poles, often made from the branches of acacia trees, which are held in place by the tension of tent ropes that are fastened to the roof where the poles stand and are fixed firmly to the ground with wooden or metal pegs. And here's an example of one of those tents that's placed on a pack animal, such as a camel, and it's an individual that's guiding a camel, okay? A single camel bearing a family's tent, all right? Now, this is before the establishment of the 4-room Israelite houses that are mostly made of mud bricks, all right? So remember I showed you that incision and showed you the inside of what the house looks like? That's when they became settled in the land. Before they were settled in the land, this is what's going on. Remember, Sukkot is a remembrance of your ancestors living a semi-nomadic lifestyle in the wilderness after the exits of Mizraim, all right, during the Exodus period, all right? So this is important. Now, you see here the black tents. See this? Black tents, all right? Now, they would have a sheen to them. So when we're talking about that Shulamite woman that's being mentioned of Song of Solomon's, she says, I'm black but comely, like the tents of Kedar. Well, this is what the tents of Kedar looked like. They were black. And when it rained, they had this sheen, which means her skin was dark and it was glistening like the wet tents of Kedar. Deep. But you got to go back and look at the culture, see if any of it is preserved today in living cultures of the ancient culture, see if it's preserved. And the tents of Kedar. So at that time, the imagery of what this woman would have looked like would have been like these tents that we see here. And then when it rained, it gave the glistening. That's deep. This is why I get into the custom, the culture, history, all that. It's fun because you get to see these things. You see how it contrasts against the light brown or tan or beige landscape. See how the black stands out? This is what she was saying. That's how she stands out. All right? Are you following? Israel Witness and Servant is funny, man. All right, so let's keep going. So King David says, beards and fridges were common throughout Mesopotamia. Yes, they was. However, the reasoning for having them, listen to what I'm saying, was different from different cultures. They had different reasonings for having them. Just like pottery. Pottery also was common in Mesopotamia. However, they are also ethnic markers for particular people groups because they represented something. So just because a custom was common does not mean it was the same shared practice amongst all the groups, because they were not a homogeneous people group. They were heterogeneous groups of people that existed in Levant and Mesopotamia, even in Kemet, Mizraim. That's important. So don't generalize everything, because when you go through the litany of these texts, which I read all the time, and I share for you guys all the time, it tells you that. Scholars know this. They tell you, okay, well, this culture has this written piece of literature to explain why they do this. Okay, so let's keep going. Right? Bedouin have always cherished living in tents since they are open to guests, and particularly love the familiar atmosphere in which they were raised, with persons socializing every evening around the campfire. A Bedouin proverb observes, a child in the men's tent never wants to sleep, wrapped by the talk of the elders. Accordingly, Bedouin throughout history have been loath to change these dwellings for a closed fixed house with a door. In southern Sinai, 1978, I heard a Bedouin poet chiding fellow tribesmen who married famously inhospitable Egyptian peasant women and moved into houses that they built for them. Right? Thus, although members of the Ayada tribe of Western Sinai settled as farmers along the freshwater canal in the Suez Canal Zone after it was dug in 1869, more than 100 years passed before those whom I met in 1973 were willing to move into permanent houses, right? Check this out. In the same way, black tents were also home to the purported Israelite forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom the book of Genesis depicts as nomads, right? Genesis 12, chapter 12, verse 8, chapter 18, verse 1, chapter 18, verse 10, chapter 24, verse 67, chapter 35, verse 21. The Bible also describes such tents as having been, at least partially, the dwelling of Abraham's nephew Lot near Sodom, Genesis 13, 12, as well as the children of Israel in Sinai, Numbers chapter 11, verse 10, chapter 19, verse 14, chapter 24, verse 5, and Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 27. That the ancient Israelites dwelled in tents is also endorsed by the books of Joshua and Chronicles. Joshua chapter 22, verses 6 to 8, 1 Chronicles chapter 4, verse 10, which cites the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and one half of Manasseh as living in them on the Transjordan steep. And in the book of Judges, Judges chapter 4, verse 17 to 21, Judges chapter 5, verses 24 to 27. Members of the northern tribes live in tents, especially Yael, the wife of a Canaanite man who killed the Canaanite leader Sisera by driving a tent peg into his temple, even as late as the United Monarchy, 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 2, 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 9, chapter 20, verse 1, chapter 20, verse 22, and the divided kingdoms, 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 16, chapter 12, verse 24, and 2 Kings chapter 14, verse 12. The Israelites, whenever homeward bound, are cited as returning to their tents. Although some biblical scholars claim that this expression is but a metaphor for any type of structure, it is hard to imagine such a metaphor arising out of a vacuum devoid of historical experience. Indeed, the archaeologist Israel Finkelstein found that the earliest Israelite stone settlements of the 12th century BCE were modeled after the former encampments of Bedouin tents. And check this out now, this is important. In the Sinai context, moreover, the Bible describes the roof of the sacred tabernacle as being made of goat hair. Exodus 25, verse 4, 26, verse 7, chapter 35, verse 26, like the roof of the Bedouin winter tent. Even if the tabernacle as described was a later priestly literal construct drawn on Canaanite prototypes, as some modern scholars claim, the authors of the Bible must have known that the inherent capacity of this cloth when woven to keep a holy sanctuary dry from the desert winter rains, whether their knowledge came through observation of Bedouin encampments in the nearby Judean desert, for example, or for centuries-old collective memories of the goat-haired tent roofs of nomadic ancestors, and I side with the latter. In either case, although the Bible does not cite this preventive measure as the reason for the use of goat hair on the roof of the Israelite sanctuary, we might well conceive that the sanctuary roofs in Exodus drew upon a Bedouin prototype, especially in light of the absence of any instructions concerning such roofs in non-biblical ancient Near Eastern tents dwelling with sanctuaries. In fact, the sole extra-biblical example discovered to date derives from the Bedouin Midianites, among whom the Bible presents the Moses group of Israelites as dwelling. The archaeologist Benno Rothenberg, excavating the Timna copper mines site in the Araba Depression in the 1950s, found such goat hair cloth near a space identified as a Midianite tented sanctuary. So then we get insight into Moshe when he was living under Jethro, okay, as a Midianite, or amongst the Midianites as a Levite. Deep. Levi, Midian, that's something totally different, right? I did a whole lecture on that. Check this out right here, this image right here. Bedouin woman weaving the roof of a tent from goat hair. Incredible when you see. She's using a whole bunch of primitive tools, no modern technology. All of this is primitive tools that's used from the land. How many of us can do that today? Okay. Now, let's go into this. We're finishing off, okay? The biblical authors also have retained from the memory of an ancestral nomadic experience the fact that the wood of desert acacia trees ever present in Sinai would be durable and suitable for the frame of such a sanctuary. Accordingly, just as hard-woven acacia is the type of wood used by desert dwellers for making items they wish to preserve, such as bowls and camel saddles, so the Bible designates it for the fabrication of all the woodwork in the holy tabernacles. A whole bunch of scriptures there. I ain't going to say all of them, all right? As with the goat hair tent roofs, one also finds no specific references to acacia wood being used for the construction of other sanctuaries in ancient Near East. Other biblical remembrances of a nomadic tent dwelling experience might be the Hebrew terms mezuzot and sha'ar, upon which verses from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 9, chapter 11, verse 18 and 21, enjoin the Israelites to inscribe God's teachings. These terms are explained in the Jewish tradition and Christian translation of the Hebrew Bibles, referring respectively to the doorposts of the house and gates, rather than to dwellings of the ancient desert. Okay. Now, I think what I want to end off and show you is this last part right here, right? This is the last part right here, right? So check this out, right? Also relevant to our understanding of domicile in the Bible is that among Bedouin and Sinai, they do not live in tents in the late summer and early fall. Keep this in mind. Okay, check this out. It is a time of the year characterized by extreme heat and dryness, a time when livestock, especially goats and sheep, must be watered every day from a sufficient supply of subterranean water rising up indwells in springs. This requires them to stay near the sources of living water that's moving. That's all it means. Until the winter rains occur, and accounts for the Bedouin not migrating at this time and consequently not being in need of a mobile shelter. Most will thus fold up their tents and have their women repair the damage caused to them by the previous winter's wear and tear. Still in need of shade from the summer sun, however, Bedouin construct what? A booth in which to reside by collecting the prevailing subshrubs of the surrounding desert. All right. And it tells you in northern Sinai, the Achillea monosperma, and thatching them together. Until the recent past, anyone traveling between the Suez Canal and the Gaza Strip during the early summer and early fall found all the Bedouin along the way dwelling in such booths. Mirroring the seasonal practice, here's the cap, we're capping it off. The Bible is quite precise in directing future generations of Israelites to dwell in booths, Hebrew Sukkot, that is, houses made of thatch or sakak, for 7 days in the 7th month, i.e. October, which we're in right now, since the biblical year began in April or Aviv, so that they will know that I, the Most High, had the children of Israel dwell in booths, and I brought them out of the land of Egypt. Leviticus chapter 23, verses 42 to 44. The writer of Nehemiah or Nehemiah 8 and 15 was also accurate when he authorized palm fronds as one sort of thatch should be used for the booths. Well, why is that? Well, in October, such fronds are no longer needed in the harvest of dates in Sinai. Thus, we find that the autonomous booths in the oasis in the sand dune area of northwestern Sinai and those of southern Sinai are constructed from fronds of local palms. Now, check this out. Here's an example of one of them. A Bedouin thatcheted home in Sinai. This is an example of one of the booths made out of those thatchets, right? And as you can see, branches and palm branches and fig branches, and they live right into this little booth right here. This is what they lived in. So it tells you the time of year. They don't live in the tents when it's warm. They live in the tents when it's cold. And when it's warm, they live in these booths. So the booths that they were living in extended all the way until the turn of the autumnal season where they're bringing in. This is why it says, make sure you still stay in these booths right before the wintry rains, because when the wintry rains comes, they put their tents back up and they use it to survive through the rest of the season. All right. This is what I want to show y'all. And this is why understanding culture is important. Looking at the non-material culture, the text, the material culture by way of archaeology, and a living culture, and using certain approaches to analyze each one of these things to harmoniously, collectively, and coherently reconstruct and restore our lost culture. All right. So again, hopefully this gives you guys some great insight. Hopefully you guys enjoyed what it is that I shared in here with the imagery, going through the text, some textual criticism, going into the living culture, which we just touched on, historical records from ancient Kemet or Mizraim, telling us the Shashu of Yod He Wav, which the Israelites would have been, portion of those Shashu of Yod He Wav, and that they were considered Bedouins or nomadic or semi-nomadic. And I also gave you the reference to the Shashu of Edom that also came and dwelt in the region of what we would call biblical Goshen, or in archaeology they call Avaris. These things are extremely important. And I want you guys to see this so you can envelop the culture from a holistic perspective and get more in-depth information about what is going on. All right. Okay. So I'm going to give 10, 15 minutes for a few questions if y'all have it. And then from there, I'm going to jump off of here. All right. I got about maybe 5, 10 more minutes. All right. So is there any questions? I'll take 1 or 2 questions and I'll close off. All right. 1 or 2 questions. All right. Throw your questions up. All right. The Black Carib says, do we know the X and Y haplogroup of the Bedouins? Some Bedouins have been tested, and there are articles that have published what their haplogroups are. However, they are not a homogeneous group. They are a heterogeneous group, which means they're different ethnic groups of people, okay? Which means they're going to vary between those groups, all right? But if you want that information, email me, my brother, and whatever I have in my archive, I'll go ahead and send it to you, okay? All right. Any other questions? Thank you, my brother Hubert. He said, Shalom, brother Ron. Thank you so much for your hard work and sharing your knowledge with our people. Of course, my brother, it is an honor to serve the people of Yah. Thank you so much, my brother. Simply Save for the donation. I appreciate that, my brother. Thank you so much. Okay. Now look at this. Keith W says, why is the word El, who I understand to be a chief demon, why is the name found in the names of Israel? Even Israel itself plus Elohim are found to have in his demon's name. Keith, I don't know what you're talking about. I have an idea of what you're talking about because I've heard people make this argument before. I prefer you to jump on live tomorrow at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, get into the open panel discussion, and me and you will have this dialogue face to face. So that way I can fully understand your position, because by you saying demon and El, you obviously don't know that term demon. That word demon did not exist in the INH period. In the scriptures, you have the word se'er or sayir, which means goat, and shedim, which is a protecting spirit of another culture, which its cognate in Assyrian is sedu, which is the bull collectus protecting spirit. Are you aware of that information? We can go deep into that. However, jump on the panel. By you saying, I bet this question won't get answered, maybe you don't know what channel you stumbled upon. We don't run away from this. We address all of this. Make sure you're there tomorrow, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let's talk about this because you're calling El a demon. I don't even know where this is coming from. But those of you who have watched my lecture, and if you haven't seen it, Keith, you need to go back and check it out. It's called El Shaddai, Yod He Wafe, El Elyon, Three of a Kind, or One and the Same. Can somebody please grab the playlist with those 4 videos, drop it right here in the chat for Keith and anybody else that wants to understand the information behind whatever it is he's talking about, because that lecture puts that to bed. However, we can have a dynamic one-on-one panel discussion, and I will address this in depth, meticulously, like a surgeon. Let's do it. Make sure you're there. All right? Cool. So who's next? Somebody says, can we buy and sell on this feast? So the first day and last day, day 1 and day 8, because there's no occupational work, the suggestion is no buying and selling. All right. The text is not specific in it. So you would use halakha, the way that you formulate the explicit from the implicit, right? You have implicit details and you make them explicit based on the template of the implicit details within the text. You can make these decisions. So if no occupational duties are done, buying and selling is occupational duties as well. So on the first day and the last day, you should cease from occupational duties, right? And that includes buying and selling. So hopefully that answers your question. All right. And again, that's the halakha that I present to you because it's not explicit in the text. All right. We know for the Sabbath over time, we see in the book of Amos, buying and selling over time was said no. However, when they were in the wilderness, we didn't have any stipulation for buying and selling. So when we go to Exodus and see the Sabbath, it says nothing about buying and selling. All right. Hopefully that answers that question. All right. So Yarden asked me, can you go a bit into Yisrael from the Ugaritic text, any validation of Yashra or Yashrala in the ancient times? Well, I gave you some references to the Shashu of Yahu that also helps to date it. Maren Patah, he has a reference to Israel. Then we have the Berlin pedestal, all right, artifact that also dates or antiquates the name Israel. All right. And then Yisrael from the Ugaritic text. I just put that post out on social media. I also posted it in the community section of YouTube. I'll go to show this because it helps to antiquate the name Israel, that it was already being used on that time. So when you hear these people from the conscious community that say, oh, that name Israel is made up, it's Isis, Ra, and El, they don't know what the hell they're talking about at all. They don't know what they're talking about. This helps to put that to bed. All right. I'm not going to go into detail about that, Yarden. However, if you want to ask that again tomorrow, I will. All right. All right. So shout out to Beats by Christian in the building. Thank you for joining us. Just call me, text what's going on. What's going on. All right. And everything there is in the text. You know, thank you, Remarkable Ministry. Shout out to Sister Gail, Brother David. Thank you, Sister Gail, for putting a link there to the playlist for that lecture series. So you can check it out. So you can, when people come up with these arguments about El, we put it to bed right there. All right. All of our support and contact information is streaming across the stream right here. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your donations through the super chat. Thank you guys for your prayers, for hitting that thumbs up, for sharing this button, and for all of our new subscribers. I appreciate y'all. Thank you guys for watching. Hit thumbs up on the way up. If you haven't already, share this video, and I pray this has been a blessing to you and your family. As we close Sukkot, for those that keep the pre-exilic Israelite KHM calendar, I say peace, shalom, and I will meet again tomorrow at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, family. See y'all then.